Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Electrical Air 464 and it says, would I be the arsehole if I accused my mum of sabotaging my truck and forbidding her from using it? This one's kind of messy. I, 19 male, have been saving for a truck for over a year now, using money from part-time jobs. I'm on the waiting list to get into the job field I actually want. I also currently still stay at home and I've been using my mum's 56 female vehicle to get back and forth to work, as she has recently retired and doesn't go out much. I saved up enough to buy a used pickup that I really wanted and that I test drove several times to make sure it was in good condition. I bought the truck, paid for several months of insurance up front and got it registered. I drove it around for a few days and it ran fine. A few days ago, my mum asked to borrow it, saying she needed a pickup to help a friend move some things, and I agreed. All I said was that I needed the gas replaced. I was respectful and thought that was fair since I've been paying for all the gas and the maintenance on her car for the last year as part of the deal for me using it. I got the truck back that evening, and it's been giving me problems since. It's been stalling on me and sometimes, most of the time, won't even crank. I asked my mum about it and she got snooty and said that she had a mechanic friend look at it and he replaced some wires and tuned it up, but it ran fine when she parked it. That's when red flags went up. Yes, the truck had a few issues, so it probably needed a tune-up, but I changed the oil and spark plugs when I got it. I had the previous owner's maintenance receipts and, as I said, nothing was so bad on it that I could drive it for several days before I lent it to her. I should say this is the messy part. My mum has a habit of being financially controlling, and she did not like it when I got the truck. She wanted me to buy a sedan from one of her friends, and she complained non-stop when I brought the truck home. She told me outright that it was a waste of money and I shouldn't have bought the vehicle from someone I didn't know. Examples of her being financially controlling are how she keeps track of my work hours, and on top of her paying rent that's equal to half of my pay, I also have to buy groceries for both myself and her. She also won't let me have access to the money my dad left when he died a few years ago, and constantly gripes whenever I spend money on myself, which isn't often. I only bought some clothes and a few games for my PC over the last year because of how hard I was working to save for a vehicle. A mechanic friend also isn't a legit mechanic. He's a guy who replaces parts for people and does oil changes out of his garage. I've noticed over the past few years that he can't really diagnose a vehicle, and he won't work on vehicles if the person who brings it in doesn't tell him exactly what they wanted replaced. I personally feel like she took it to him and had him do something to the truck, but I have no proof. This kind of petty isn't beyond her. She slashed the neighbor's pool once because they didn't drain them out at the end of the summer, and they were just breeding mosquitoes, and constantly reports minor things to the police. My aunt told me last night that if my mum and I have it out, I can stay with her family, and I'm really considering accusing my mum to her face of sabotaging my truck. If I do, I know she'll kick me out. Plus I still have to pay to have the truck taken to a real mechanic. But she's been bitching at me non-stop about how much of a shitty decision I made and how she told me it was a waste of money. So, would I be the arsehole if I told her off and accused her of sabotaging my truck? I'm fairly certain that's what happened, and I'm about to break down under the stress and disappointment. No, another hugely controlling parent, and if you don't call it out now, it will only get worse until you eventually move out. And there was a lot of things jumping out to me as I was reading it, like she makes him pay half of his income, then plus all the groceries for both of them, plus the maintenance and stuff and the gas he's paying for her car while using it, which, fair enough, but on top of everything else, I understand giving your child, financial responsibility. With all the other information we have, she's trying to keep him there by, making him use the majority of his money. She's also withholding inheritance money that his deceased father left him. And if that was willed and part of the estate that it should go to his son, she'd get herself in big trouble with that one. And they're monitoring his work hours, criticizing purchases, trying to force him to buy a car from a friend instead of the one he actually wanted. The past history with property destruction as well, slashing the neighbor's pool. It's all pointing to, the sabotage is almost certainly real. Truck's running absolutely fine until she touches it, which is just all hugely controlling behavior. She's trying to force him back into dependence on her car and her control. And in the end, it's just abuse. But a commenter says, you also need to contact a lawyer regarding the payment from your father's death. You're old enough to stand up for yourself, so why have you allowed this woman to take control of your life, sabotage and manipulate you? I think you personally need to get the hell out of that house before she fucked you up good and proper. Once you get your own place, you can cut all ties with her and good riddance to her. Opie says, I agree. Respectfully though, it's kind of hard to do all that when you started broke and someone is working hard to keep you that way. Lawyers around here don't really like to do things on contingency. And trust me when I say the price of the truck I just bought barely covered the retainer for the more affordable ones. I've tried. I'm sorry, I'm a mess right now. My aunt just offered me a place to stay yesterday because she honestly had no idea how things were. I'm probably going to start packing and moving out today and have the truck towed to a mechanic. Another commenter says, do that and settle down for a bit. Write her a note. If you deny me access to my dad's inheritance, I will take legal action. What kind of income does your mother have? If she receives something from the government, she probably is committing fraud. If so, she's money hungry. That is something you can mention as well. First, get some rest and make a plan. Opie says she gets a small retirement check from her former employer, and the house is paid off. I don't think she gets any money from the government. Another commenter says, not the arsehole. How do you know your dad left you money? And where is it to the best of your knowledge? Did you ever see it or sign it over to your mum? You may not need to hire an attorney to recover it if you can figure out where it is. Opie says, my dad died of cancer 5 years ago. A few months before he died, he told me that he had been putting money into a savings account out of every paycheck since before I was born, and was planning to surprise me with it when I graduated high school. He said there was almost $40,000 in it, and my mum would take care of it until I graduated. So she has the account, and I know it still exists because she gets the statements in the mail, and that's the only account that my parents had, that I know of, at this particular bank. A commenter says, I don't think you would be the arsehole, but I think the smarter thing is to just leave. Pack your stuff, drop the truck off at a mechanic, and go stay with your aunt. Your mum is probably trying to keep you and your paycheck from wandering too far. This is a toxic mess I'd get out of ASAP. So Opie comes in with her update and says to answer some questions that people asked. Why don't I get a better job? I was working 2 part-time jobs. Good jobs aren't easy to come by where I live. That's part of the complication with moving in with my aunt, as she lives an hour away and I would have to find work all over again. That issue had been resolved though. If he did, I've never seen it. I don't think he did, and when I asked my aunt about it on Thursday, she is my dad's sister. She said she didn't think he did, but that's part of the update. The update itself is this. My mum and I did have a major argument, and not my aunt's until I save up enough to get my own place. The argument wasn't over the truck though, although that did come into play. Basically, I took the advice of everyone who commented, who said just to go no contact and move out. I had to make sure I could get a job though, and my uncle was able to get me a decent job as a construction labourer for the company he works for. I start Monday. My aunt and uncle came over last night to load my truck onto a trailer and tow it to a mechanic closer to where they live. They're going to loan me the money to get it fixed. I talked to my mum's mechanic friend, and he said that she brought it in for a tune-up because it was backfiring. Long story short, the timing belt started whining, so he replaced it. What my mum didn't tell me was that the truck had to be towed home because he didn't time it correctly, and she was supposed to get a professional to look at it. That explains why the truck only cranked once since then. So that's the good news. The truck is fixable and my aunt and uncle are going to help me. When I told my aunt the full story about the truck and the money my dad left for me, she got mad and told me that she and my uncle were coming over Thursday night to pick me and my truck up. She wouldn't tell me what exactly she was mad about, but I was packed up that evening when they showed up. As soon as she got here, she got into a fight with my mum, asking her about my dad's money. There was a lot of cursing and names called, and my mum almost called the police, but my aunt, and this scared the crap out of me, threatened to have her arrested for fraud if she didn't own up, so the cops weren't called. I'm not going to go into the full details of the argument because it's too much to type, but basically my mum has been putting small amounts out every month for the last year to supplement her retirement salary. Apparently the account was put in trust before my dad died, and my mum was the trustee, which is what made my aunt mad because she knew the money was there and didn't know that I had never received any of it. I hadn't ever talked finances with her before this. My mum doesn't want to turn the account over because she claims that the trusted paperwork says that she's not required to until I turn 25. She also started yelling at me for running my mouth to my aunt and accusing me of trying to ruin her retirement. And she deserved that money for taking care of me and my dad when she got sick, etc. I got pissed and told her I was going to sue her for the money and that I knew what happened to the truck and I was going to sue her for that too. She kind of broke down and started saying how hard it had been for her since my dad died. But I didn't buy it because she's always been petty and controlling, even when I was a kid. She basically told me to get out and tried to turn it into a pity party about how hurt she was and how was she going to pay bills, etc. I just left. The mechanic my aunt and uncle are paying for says he can have the truck up and running by Tuesday because he's backed up until then, but I'll take that. Next week, my aunt is going to start looking for a good lawyer for me. My uncle suggested the same thing a lot of commenters did, which was that we call the state bar and see if there are any lawyers that need pro bono hours. Right now, I'm fully no contact with my mum, and she's left me 5 or 6 texts that range from, "I'm sorry, let's talk about everything," to, "You're an ungrateful son, how could you betray me like this?" I'm just ignoring them. Thank you all who commented for the advice, especially all of you who advised I keep my cool. She was ready to call the cops on my aunt, so I can imagine she would have done the same to me if I confronted her. I'm just going to save up for now. The job I'm waiting for is now out of the picture due to how far away I now live. But I'm thinking about trying for trade school or an apprenticeship in one of the trades. Thank you for all the good advice. I really wouldn't have been able to set everything in motion without you all. Top commenter said on this one, not the arsehole, get a lawyer and sue her for the money she took and have the trustee changed. Commenter 2, it is probably against the trust rules for mum to be spending the money. Most trustees are held responsible for any illegal withdrawals and will be charged with a crime and required to pay it all back. Another commenter says, and please don't start feeling guilty about going no contact. Just remember, it doesn't have to be forever. You can reevaluate the situation in 5 years if you want. And if you see your mother in court, you can always say, "Mum, it's best for my mental health right now to keep my distance, since I don't feel like you've treated me fairly in the past. So let's get through this lawsuit, and if I feel that you are being honest and truly want to do the right thing, then I will think about adding you back into my life. Noticed you have not have made a commitment, but if she thinks she may get you back, maybe she'll do the right thing by your father's estate." Another commenter says, all excellent news. Don't let your mother manipulate you into feeling guilty. You owe her nothing. Remind yourself how she took advantage of you and stole from you. Hope you can get a lawyer soon before she drains the entire account. Your aunt and uncle sound like awesome people. Good luck. Stories like that afterwards, because I always try and jump into different people's positions and think, how can you do that to your kid? This guy should have had a nice little boost into his early adult life, which is tough right now, and would be really beneficial to him to get him going into adulthood. And there she is just spending it for a retirement. I really hope that OP is able to access it in some shape or form before it all gets used. I mean, I don't feel particularly hopeful about that because actually how long has she been using it? But everything else I'm really glad for OP for. And the aunt and uncle in this sound absolutely awesome and will set him on the right path going forward. And getting out of that toxic situation was the number one in my opinion. I always find it really interesting, when you get comments saying, why have you allowed this person to control your life, sabotage and manipulate you? It's exactly it. They manipulated them. Not bashing on the commenter, of course, because, I think if you haven't been a part of that sort of dynamic, it's difficult to see. As we always say, this person's been in this kind of position for their whole life. They grew up in it. They think that's their normal. Until someone from the outside and says, fuck, that's not normal. It's some of the reactions I get when I tell stories about the area I used to live and people just that's fucking weird. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from the Petty Revenge subreddit from Dad's Milk 420, who says, old guy at the state fair yelled at a little girl for standing in front of the butter sculpture. So I took revenge for her. This happened last summer. Like the title says, I was at the state fair, looking at the butter sculpture. I gotta Google this. Yep, butter sculptures are a thing. Apparently they've been going on for a very long time. I'm not sure why I didn't know this. Every day's a learning day. Anyway, we continue. This old dude is standing next to me recording it as it spins around, because the sculpture had two different sides to it. This little girl, maybe 3 if I had to guess, runs up to it and presses her face and hands against the glass, all excited. I laughed because I found it cute. I remember being young and that excited for silly things, but the old dude next to me immediately starts bitching. Specifically, he said, "Jesus Christ, get out of the way." And keep in mind, this girl is not even tall enough to mess with his precious video. If anything, he should have been happy to catch such a genuine state fair moment. But nope, apparently, in his mind, he deserves to get a completely uninterrupted video. The mum awkwardly apologized and pulled her daughter back. I was immediately fucking livid though. As soon as it got to the point that the butter sculpture was turning to the side he hadn't recorded, I slowly walked in front of him and past his camera so that I blocked all the important stuff. As I was walking away, he goes, "You're a real arsehole, you know that." And I shot back, "Dude, what does that make you? You yelled at a little girl because you need your video that bad." He huffed and puffed and goes, "Well, you're still an arsehole." I just laughed and kept walking away at that point. Made eye contact with the mum before I left though. She had a huge smile on her face, gave me a nod and mouthed, "Thank you." One of the most satisfying moments of my life, honestly. Whenever I read about something like this, immediately what pops into my head, which I don't know, might be sad, but it's Alfred from The Dark Knight when he says some men just want to watch the world burn. That's all I can think of, because seeing a kid happy about seeing a butter sculpture, you know, that's pretty wholesome in my opinion. But dearie me. I've been distracted for about half an hour now, not recording, just looking at butter sculptures. I've been trying to find if there's any in the UK that I can go to. Quick little side quest story. When I was working for a market research company, and part of my job was going out to buy competitor products for our projects. They say, you know, a company that produces butter gets in touch with our company and they say, "Oh, we want to test our new butter product with a bunch of people." So the company would recruit a bunch of people, have it like in a hall, and then they would taste the butter on a cracker or something like that. My part of the job was to sort out all the paperwork and basically make it happen, get all the stuff that's needed to test it, including the competitor products to test against it, so you don't know which one you're tasting, and so people can give like an honest opinion of which butter they think is better. Which had me doing odd things in supermarkets, buying unusual amounts of products, and this one particular one was butter. I think I needed like around 800 tubs of a certain types of butter. But also buying this butter, they all had to be like the same expiry date and batch code, so you know there's no differences in the batch that they've made, because sometimes, you know, there's small differences in tolerances, etc, etc. So I'd be walking out of supermarkets with like, I don't know, all their butter. One particular time I was in an Asda store, big supermarket. I think it might be like a part of Walmart or something. And I'm walking out with a trolley or shopping cart full of butter, like literally to the top. And you get lots of people side-eyeing you, the odd person taking a picture randomly. You know, I've done this time and time again with a whole host of different products. But this particular time I had this old dude follow me out the store, and I could see he wanted to say something. So I slowed down, he caught me up, and "What are you doing with all this butter?" And it became a fun thing for me because I could just make up random stories about the product that we're particularly using. Unfortunately, I didn't say a butter sculpture. I wish I did now. I got bored of explaining about market research. You know, I probably should have been nice and done all that sort of stuff, but I said it was a butter slide. This weekend, my family and friends are having our annual butter slide. Guy gets really curious about it, asking, "Oh, so what happened?" And I was kind of like, well, it's just kind of self-explanatory. You know, we just tip out the butter all onto a slide and down we go. I was like, if you're in the area, come along. I was just really praying after I said that he wasn't going to turn around and say, "Yeah, I will come along, give me the address." But he seemed quite content with that answer, and off he went. And I like to think in my head, you know, he probably said, "What a fucking idiot," and just wandered off. I like to think in my head that he went off and told people, and it's been spread around that in his mind that somewhere out there every year there's a butter slide thing going on. Who knows? Maybe he's created his own family tradition. They've got a butter slide going now. Anyway, I'm going off on my usual bullshit here. What do you guys make of today's stories? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.